Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The Matrix.
Do you want to know what it is?
Hello and welcome to The Road to the Matrix Resurrections. What do you want watchers look back at the Wachowskis' iconic trilogy before we jack back into the Matrix again. I'm Ashley Hobley, the one, hosting this podcast, and joining me today is the architect behind everything Explosion Network, Dylan Light.
I forgot you had all these fucking puns. Yeah, happy to be here.
And taking the red pill with us is Take My Tone, Simon Blackburn.
I too enjoyed Herbie Fully Reloaded.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I actually did. I had that movie on DVD. Quite enjoyed it. It was before Lindsay Lohan went a bit off the rails, but you know,
a little off the rails, yeah.
Fully Reloaded? Anyone? No? Okay.
Yeah.
She reloaded something that wasn't Herbie.
Yep. She reloaded red pills. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Today we're talking about The Matrix Reloaded. So please be aware we'll be freely discussing anything and everything about the plot themes in any of the film. So if you haven't watched it, come back later. So yes, Matrix Reloaded.
The machines are digging. They're boring from the surface straight down to Zion.
There is only one way to save our city. Neo.
What happens if I fail?
Then Zion will fall.
They need you.
I need you.
That worth dying for?
Directed by the Wachowskis, written by the Wachowskis, based on characters by the Wachowskis, starring Keanu Reeves, Laurence Fishburne, Carrie-Anne, Hugo Weaving, Jada Pinkett Smith, and Gloria Foster. Freedom fighters Neo, Trinity, and Morpheus continue to lead the revolt against the machine army, unleashing their arsenal of extraordinary skills and weaponry against the systematic forces of repression and exploitation. In their quest to save the human race from extinction, they gain greater insight into the construct of the Matrix and Neo's pivotal role in the fate of mankind. Simon, what did you think of The Matrix Reloaded?
Yeah, so I have only but fond memories of this, as we touched on in the last episode. And yeah, there's many little scenes in here that I forgot, and just like the length of scenes and like the amount of action, like there was a lot denser and a longer film than I remember. Because I always seem to think, like in my mind, you think, okay, there's like an opening, there's the cave rave, and then there's the twins. Like that's in your mind, it just jumps straight to that, and it takes much longer and story building and everything to get to that point. So I actually appreciated it a lot more. We'll probably touch on at the end of it. I still hold the first one a bit higher than this one, but this one was really enjoyable upon rewatch.
Cool. Dylan, what are your thoughts on The Matrix Reloaded?
Yeah, this is my favorite of them. Like when I was younger, I would say that The Matrix, I think these days I'd say The Matrix is the better film simply because it's more like, it's just more of a better, well-rounded package.
Complete, yeah.
Yeah, like doesn't have as many things that stand out, because this movie's problems are also its positives, which is that it does, after the success of the first one, Wachowskis are like, right, fucking all in now. Like, here's our crazy action scenes, but also here's the like deep metaphorical shit that we want to be talking about that maybe we didn't want to go too hard on in the first film because we wanted, like, maybe Warner Brothers didn't let them or whatever. But with this one, they're like really into, like, there's several conversations just between Neo and other like AI
programs, yeah,
just big metaphorical, just back and forth mumbo jumbo stuff, which is I know for a lot of people that's where the franchise sort of takes a down slide between that and I think the third film. The biggest complaint people have is just that it's not in the Matrix as much. But yeah, the main thing between this and the third one is that people are like, what is all this life meaning bullshit? Just let me see karate fucking wall running. Come on, shoot someone, Neo. The action scenes in this are as good as the first one most of the time, but there are some that stand out as being worse because they are just too much, which is primarily just all the CGI Smith fuckfest stuff, which doesn't hold up as well as special effects stuff for some of the other stuff in this movie, and also some of the other stuff that's just in the first movie. Like, it legit, it's funny because I wouldn't have said this when it comes out, because you wouldn't be like, that looks like a video game, because you'd be like, video games don't look like that at the moment. However, now in the year 2021, I'm watching it and going, that looks like a video game, because it actually just does look like a video game.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, but yeah, it's kind of interesting looking back at this film with kind of like a critical eye. There's lots of actions and there's lots of scenes with exposition, and that's just all there is, pretty much. There's very little of the in between or much character work and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, obviously it ends on a note where it's definitely a part 1 of 2. And I feel like this is the move. This might have been the movie that set off the trend of, if your first movie is successful, you'd like set up a trilogy. It's like 2 and 3 are like a sequel split in 2 parts.
Yeah,
but
or
you know what else is weirder is
it sort of set off the trend to film parts like 2 and 3 back to back in one go and then split it, sort of thing. Yeah,
because it doesn't really feel like movie 2 and 3. It feels like movie 2 point, like half, like how they do.
Well, now it would be Matrix Reloaded Part 1.
Yeah, and then Part 2. Like, it feels like the more modern day equivalent to this, that the most well known thing is, like, it feels like watching the end of Infinity War and then going into Endgame. But there's also just the Deathly Hallows, Divergent, Breaking Dawn, like all these teen movies that were being split into 2 parts and whatever else. It feels more equivalent to that. It doesn't feel like a sequel. It really does just feel part 1, and like the next film picks up straight away, whereas there's a time gap between the first film and this film, but there's not a time gap between this and the next one.
Well, that's also necessitated by the story of Zion being about to destroy it in 72 hours.
Do you feel like
it just makes it feel like a big story instead of
do you feel
a
like
sequel?
Yeah.
Looking back on it, that they could have actually split this into 2 and then those 2 be like an hour and a half each or something? Like, I kind of feel like there's like...
I mean, I think like...
There's a lot
even though we're ragging on it like being 2 movies, we still got to remember they were released like 8 months apart, so it's not like people had to wait.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, do you think that this could have this Reloaded itself could have been split into 2 films and expanded upon, so then you get like 4... Like, I just feel like there's so much in this film and like so much...
But then when you break it down, the plot of this film is so lean. It's like, we talk to the Oracle. The Oracle says we need to get this key guy. We get the key guy. He tells us we need to go see this other guy in this one building, and that's it. That's the movie. Sure, there's these exponential scenes of them talking about choice and that kind of stuff, but other than that, there isn't much plot.
Yeah, but I guess it's the same as if you're thinking about, like, the final 2 Harry Potters, like the part 1 is just like, let's walk around in a moodily lit whatever and collect some pieces. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's pretty lean, and I feel like there's enough that you could expand. Like, I'm not disappointed by, like, I don't feel like it's overly rushed, but I feel like if you're talking about you want there to be more dialogue between the people or whatever, they could have fleshed that out, because the action scenes, once it gets into it, are all almost back to back in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's... Yeah,
I'd say you could space this out, because there's a couple scenes. So, like, who's the new dude? I forget his name. Whatever, the new driver. That dude.
Link.
Yeah. So Link gets a whole little scene with his partner, and you get like a little bit of backstory to him, but then it's like, all right, straight on. But no one else in the movie really gets anything. Like Morpheus, you find out he's some like sort of god, and he has this history with other characters, but there's not really enough time given to that. In a different movie, there's so much more time we probably could have spent in Zion, exploring some of those characters a little bit and having more conversations. Most of the time when Trinity and Neo are talking, it's mostly just like, I love you, let's fuck, or I'm scared of you dying. Like, there's no in between.
One thing, when you mentioned that, this is a very sexual film. Like more than I remember. I thought there was just the scene, just the sex scene, but there's actually much more references and things like that, and obviously the whole like love between the two than I remember. And at the same time, Ash, before when you mentioned about obviously filling in, really pushing in a lot of the CGI with some of the action sequences and stuff, this film still retains that good kind of like film grain quality to it. Whereas I think we got so used to now everything being so slick and crisp with like MCU that it was actually cool watching back at this. The downfall of that means that when you do get the full video gamey parts in some of the scenes, they stand right out because they almost appear like, I guess like a PS3, 4 era kind of like look to it.
Yeah, a little bit. I assume you guys wish Zion was a bit more fleshed out. Like, we do get like a good 15, 20 minutes, I feel like, there. But, you know, it's mostly Neo talking to a counselor and then just a little bit of Link talking to his partner.
I don't feel like we get enough solely because this movie and the next movie become, the whole thing is protect Zion. They're all going to die. Blah, 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 blah. And because we didn't spend a second there in the first film, it feels very much like this movie goes, oh, we need to quickly introduce this place, so then we'll care
Let's
about it.
Let's introduce all these characters
there.
that you care about in the next movie.
But you don't get enough time.
Overwhelming in that instance because you go from this like just this crew and the agents in the first one. It's all very you're thrust into this like zone and everything's very dense and then action scenes and everything. Which, yeah, whatever. Like, I feel like the pacing itself throughout is fine. It's more just going from the first to the second that's quite stark.
Yeah, I think there's certain elements that would have been interesting to look at, have more of, like, how we didn't actually see Neo interacting with, like, his worshippers, I guess you would call them. Like, that would have been interesting to watch and look at.
I mean, I was glad that it opened with the Trinity opening, like the essentially the dream sequence, because that's like echoing back to the start of the first one. When she lands, it's like Black Widow stole that from Trinity. You know what I mean? Like, it's an epic scene. The whole falling shooting, just introducing that and then returning to that as like sort of Neo's worries and stuff. But I feel like this is where you start to see that just leaning too much into reliance on effects, kind of from the bat, just with some of those bullet shots and the way that the bullet hits her body and stuff. That hasn't exactly aged that well, but I think it's in many ways this has great advancements over the 99 first one, but again, just falling into that trap of just using a bit too much of the CGI.
But I think they were just going for bigger and better, definitely. Bigger.
Yeah. So
bolder.
Bigger and bolder, so you naturally have to cut some corners, I guess. So
well, I guess we've sort of touched on Zion and stuff, so I don't know, I've sort of got my stuff in kind of sequential order, but I just feel like that when you first just see Neo back in the Matrix and he fights the three agents, I'm just like, Neo looks cooler than ever. Like, I feel like I was watching this,
he does. This is the
excited.
When I think of Neo, this is the look that I think of.
Yep.
Like the really long coat.
Just all of that, and just his confidence with the fighting, and then you then pass through to the whole Agent Smith talking. Like, I love that. Just them sort of like complimenting each other in a way. Just that whole thing, just bringing it back to, I guess, kind of. This may be just a result of just how they're presented in the first film, but I feel like in this film, it's just any time it comes back to just Neo and Agent Smith, that's where I feel the most engaged. I'm just so invested in those two.
Well, I think they're kind of central to the story, I guess. It's interesting. Agent Smith kind of has implanted himself into the story, I guess, is the takeaway. How do we all feel about the Burly Brawl this time, watching it? The big 100 Smith versus Neo.
Again, I wasn't sure, so jumping straight into that. That's still, yes, this suffers the most from the video game effect, but it's still my favourite part of the film. I like this more than the highway scene. And the highway scene is epic.
Yeah, this is my least favorite fight because it's just so. I don't think it holds up very well. There are so many times it goes slow motion with Neo like flipping through the air, and you can tell it's a CGI model. It just does not look like Keanu Reeves' face at all. And it was distracting the absolute fuck out of me because once I picked up on it once, I was constantly picking up on how often it was switching to a CGI face like all these times. And there's also just some bad animation here with the like, and quite often the Matrix has its rules as how to like people run on walls, but at least it's like realistic, as if like it makes sense
People
within
don't
the Matrix
get
rules.
punched into weird directions.
Yeah, like there's just some weird body like movement in here that just doesn't like fit. And again, it just looks very Play-Doh-y video game sort of thing.
Yeah.
Although rewatching this, I was having weird memories about used to like when we were supposed to be doing work in school or whatever, there was a website where you could play like Java web-based games, and there was one for this fight where you just fight Agent Smiths, and all you do is like use the keys to fight them and throw the pole around or whatever. It was like a special attack. And then the same website had a game for Kill Bill where you, again, it was just a character in the middle of the screen and he was just fighting the crazy 88 or whatever. Like it's the exact same setup, but yeah.
I think the idea with this for me, it's yes, it's definitely aged the worst, and I was also distracted. But the reason it just still holds up as my favorite part is because of going back to that feeling of seeing that for the first time at the cinema, as well as just thinking about at that point in time what a technical feat and all the effort that went into it was. So it's like, yeah, definitely aged poorly, but I guess I appreciate that unique like factor about it because
technically impressive.
Time, yeah, at that time I'd basically never seen anything like that. Like so many different characters all come in at once ever in a film. I was like, well, like, they can do that, and the fact that it was Agent Smith who was like my favorite character, it's a big plus for me.
Yeah, I think it's a good fight. Like it's really well choreographed, and obviously it's like a lot of long shots and like. It feels like it's almost one take at like a certain point and that kind of stuff. So, and then just like the facial, like they all like look like Agent Smith. It's like you believe that Agent like Hugo Weaving was almost every single role to a certain extent, like at least for the close ups.
Do you think it was? I don't know if I was hearing it, but that at the very end of the scene, just before he decides to like do his like airburst thing, and he literally bowls out a whole bunch of Smiths. It makes a 10-pin bowl noise.
It is actually a 10-pin bowl sound.
It is a 10-pin bowl.
It's 100% 10.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. I don't know why. But
yeah,
that is.
It's a choice.
Odd choice. Yeah,
it's a choice.
it's a very cartoony choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously we go from that to them going to see. What's his name? Is the Merovingian.
And I was sort of thinking, the Merovingian. I was like, is this like a prequel to the Mare of Easttown?
Oh.
No. So apparently it's the Merovingians were ruled France at one point. It's like a dynasty of French in the past. So that's where that name comes from.
Okay. I mean, everything has some relation, I guess. They got like all these sort of references to old sort of like... early art period times and stuff. For me, the Merovingian in himself, he's like the embodiment of the word pompous. Like he's just so he's exuding that and so to see him shortly after get frustrated with what Persephone does, it's cool because then it's kind of like he's breaking his control.
I think as a younger person, when I saw it the first time, I didn't understand the context of what he did to the cake.
Well, he's coding cake gasms.
It's like, why did you make her need to pee? It's like really weird.
No. She didn't need to pee. She needed to piece. I must take a piece. I laughed at that.
It's a really weird scene.
Piece of cake, yeah.
It is.
It's really weird when you think of the context that this AI was trying to get some sort of pleasure from this person.
Yeah, it
is implied later that she wasn't kissing his mouth; she was kissing something else.
Yeah, and then you're then led into the Persephone essentially forcing Neo to kiss, and like I just love like just those very slight little motions of Trinity, and you could see that she's like seething underneath, even though she's got the shades on, just wanting to fuck her up, and she doesn't. That whole scene is quite.
Again, this implies that these AIs like have feelings and emotions and stuff. It's like interesting.
They're advanced, man.
The most important piece of trivia I found.
They just don't have empathy. That's all.
The most important thing I looked up was if he actually swore when he says that swear words are great. Apparently he says, "Goddamn whore, filthy shithouse, jerk, bugger off your mother," is what the French, when he's saying swear words are great, translates to. So
it's good to know.
There you
I
go.
wonder what they made it in France. Does he still speak French?
I mean, he doesn't say anything like too bad. That it can still probably keep its light M rating.
No, but you know how apparently the Swedish chef in Sweden is like the Norwegian chef.
Yeah.
So maybe they would have changed the language up just so it works better. So obviously we get Monica Bellucci as Persephone, who, screws around with, I don't know, she messes with them so they can get the keymaker, and then, get the awesome highway sequence.
I think just prior to that, something that completely took me back when you got those two old Matrix Code guys chilling watching that old horror film. And when I first saw it, I was like, what the hell's Michael Jackson doing in this movie? Like that thing on the horror film screen just looked, and I don't even know what film it is. But I just like that introduction of that whole concept of like, okay, these guys are old code and yada yada. Because then I guess shortly after this, you're introduced to the twins as well, and I completely forgot about their whole ghost mode thing. Like I almost wish it was executed differently back in the day, because that's the only bit that I kind of like. Again, that video gamey thing, but they made good use of it. I think with like jumping into passing vehicles and things like that.
I don't think they overdo it, so it never like looks too bad. Like they don't like they're not using it too often without necessity, I guess.
I also forgot they're played by actual twins as well. I just assumed it was the same guy originally.
We're getting agitated. Yes, we are.
And then, so just come back to Merovingian. This is essentially the first time we see like hand-to-hand weapons over guns, like just full-on tridents and everything. Because you don't really get
probably
prior to that. Yeah, so that was cool. I love that how they lent into just that as the use of the fight sequence and just that brutal ending to the little dude at the end. That was a pretty badass fight scene, I reckon.
Yeah, it was definitely a cool fight, like using all the staircases and like weapons, and even Neo like blocking that scimitar with his hand.
I dubbed it Aquaman on land because of all the tridents that we used. So
So then obviously we get the key maker.
Yes.
Open a door to the city.
Little man that doesn't
like,
say anything much until when he does, and then he has a lot to say.
Yeah. Cool effect. Obviously, we've seen it in like other things, but it's still cool. Like the door that leads somewhere else, and then you close it, and it's back to normal. A good way to get Neo away from everybody else, I guess, more than anything else.
Mm.
And then the highway chase sequence, which is amazing. Incredibly shot on in Sydney on highway that hadn't been opened yet.
Oh wow!
From memory,
didn't know that. Significantly greener color grading than I remember, because like again that idea of across the three films it becoming progressively greener. So that I was like, oh wow, they really lent into that. But the actual the stuff that happens in this entire, because I said I forgot how long this whole sequence is. And how diverse it is, just like all the different kind of like ideas that they're going for, the whole Morpheus on top of the truck doing the flying swan sort of thing, and those bits kind of made it just that much more enjoyable on rewatch. Because again, from memory, all I thought about was like twins and guns and cars flipping, and that was sort of about it. But yeah, no, this was cool. I actually quite laughed at the little sort of blade fight in the car. I sort of likened it to when like you're trying to get your kids to behave in the back of the car and you're just doing that sort of thing. And just some of those swift moves and that like Trinity's driving and then she's like and stuff. That's sweet. So yeah, I thought it was cool.
Yeah, this is. Although I mentioned when we talked about the first one last week that they I'd rewatched this like a couple years ago when I was like, oh, this is still awesome. So I still feel like it's awesome. It holds up really well. The only special effect thing that is like, yeah, the twins at times, a couple times, depending. Like, I think it looks good. Probably 90% of the time. There's a couple of shots of the twin ghosting stuff, like maybe during an explosion, it just sort of looks off with the transparency for the explosion in the background. Like a couple bits and bobs like that where it doesn't quite work for me, but most of the time doesn't bother me. I think the agent jumping on the cars doesn't look great. He looks like at one stage his body turns into Slender Man. It just looks really weird. But other than that, I think it holds up really well. Obviously, there's a lot of practicality to this, which is why you'll always, like, if you shoot as much as you can practically and then combine in special effects where necessary, you're going to have something that holds up a lot better. And the fact that they're on a real highway, they have real backgrounds, they have all these, like, they destroyed hundreds of cars in this movie, like there's lots of reality to a movie that uses, yes, a lot of special effects, but they still are doing a lot of it real. They still have a lot of like wire work for, people flying around and all this sort of stuff. It's not all done digitally unless they really have to. And I think it shows here. But yeah, this whole sequence is really great. I think the unsung hero also is the music. So from the second they get out of, when they get to the car garage part there and like kicks in as they're trying to escape, and you've got the dunna, like it's like this constant, like as soon as it's like always playing under. And I think it's this like standout sort of track from all three Matrix films that's really important to this film, because even when they're in the car and they're doing like it's like almost in time to the beat, like like cool. They're blocking like in time. Yeah, so I think that's sort of one thing maybe a lot of people don't think about, because they just think about sort of Morpheus fucking samurai swording a car in half, and yeah, that is cool. And just the whole way the scenes build up to be so like tense, because they do a good job of explaining it. Like, you're not supposed to go on highways, like, and Trini's like, you never told me. Like, they make sure that you as an audience know the highway is not somewhere you should go in the Matrix. And it makes sense to you as a viewer too, because you're like, it does make sense because it's a big open area. There's no phone booths anywhere along there for like ages. Like
on set track, there's like,
yeah, there's no easy escape or way to lose. Like, it does make sense why in this world that the highway is a place that people would be told to stay the hell away from. So it leads to this awesome sequence with so many moving parts and whatnot. And then, yeah, you get to the finale when Neo comes in and saves the day, and just in the nick of time, where it doesn't seem like he's gone for too long that it's sort of unrealistic. Like, it does make sense. And he had his own little fight prior, which was awesome as well. But yeah, this is the standout scene from the movie, and I still think it is really, really good.
Yeah. So to clarify, it was shot in freeway in Akron, Ohio, but most of the movie was shot in Sydney. So, but yeah, really cool. Lots of cool sequences. Obviously, Trinity again jumping off a bridge onto a moving car, and then getting that motorcycle. She didn't have to get they were gonna teach how to hotwire a motorcycle, but no, he had a key.
I'm the key master.
How good would it be to have a key to everything?
It was funny that when you mentioned before about some of the agent looking a bit dodged with some of the CGI. One thing that I do think has held up and shows a good advancement though are the agent body hacks. In this, they just look significantly better than in the first film. So I at least sort of like enjoyed that they didn't just like rely on, I guess, like the same technique. They make kind of like the distortion, the stretching look a bit cooler. Between that and then just Agent Smith himself with almost that like, symbiote like takeover, that looks markedly better than the first one. But same deal with the highway thing. I think it's only really when the twins get close, especially face close to the camera in ghost mode, that's when it's like the real giveaway. But I think generally it's fast paced enough that it works well.
Well, shout out here too. They released a video game the same year called Enter the Matrix.
Yep.
It's fucking awesome. Played the ever-loving hell out of it. And the best thing they ever done, and it's still like, it blew my mind when I was playing like back in the day. It's not as exciting now because you see it happen all the time, but they were like, this is official. It's written by the Wachowskis. It's part of the story. It's voiced by the characters. It's like basically part of the the Matrix universe and considered canon and all that sort of stuff. So, and that's really cool. And yeah, I was watching this. I was like, wait, yeah, there's that part in that game where you like literally do a mission and then you drive the car up as Jada Pinkett's character.
Naomi, yeah.
Naomi, you like, drive in the game, you like drive the car up the highway right in time to catch Neo and stuff like that. I was like, oh yeah, fuck yeah. What a cool game.
Yeah, so really cool scene. Obviously, like, I feel like any of the explosions in this movie don't look fantastic. Like, I feel like those haven't aged well. Like, but it's still cool to see two semi-trailers smash into each other and Neo fly in from out of nowhere to rescue everybody.
I was going to say, I think the only explosion that I particularly think still looks awesome, and this is jumping ahead, is just before Neo does the Trinity rescue with the melting door and like the liquid fire like going through the building and then the building exploding from like halfway. I still thought that looked sweet. And he's sort of like, traversing through the building before he shoots out like a bullet. So that still holds up enough in my mind.
All right. And then we get to, the climax of the film with them trying to break into the building that the rooms only open for a very short period of time, under certain circumstances. If power's off or whatever, it's very convoluted. It's like, this seems terribly unnecessary steps. Why don't you just leave the room open all the time? There should have been an easier way to turn off the security system, but whatever. They all go try to stop it. Of course, Neo's had these visions of Trinity dying, so he's like, nah, you can't come. I can't tell you why. I don't want to reveal any of my emotions or feelings, but you can't come into the Matrix. And then she has to come into the Matrix.
Yes.
Fate.
I think one thing that I know down here, when you got all the doorways and you've got the hallway of Agent Smith, and then Morpheus is getting like three-way fingered by Agent Smith, and I'm like, this is a sexual film. It really is.
It is, yeah. How did Smith get in there?
Smith's everywhere.
He's free, man. He's in the walls. He's in the air.
There's no strings on me.
All around us. Speaking of delivering words, I always find it hilarious. Like when we get to the architect, with like ergo, concordantly, assiduously, inexorably.
Yeah, what's that?
It's the human dictionary. Human.
Yeah.
Dictionary. But still very much an old prick. Like he's like a university professor that just loves himself too much. That's what it comes across.
So the architects. We get the architect. Do we understand what happened? What is the rationale behind the Matrix?
Kinda.
I think I was a bit more distracted by just like the number of small screens on the wall. I was thinking like you could just get like large panels, man. You could have like.
My favorite part is
they're all CRT screens.
Yeah, exactly.
My favorite part is
cool. Like, I love the opening of this film with like the old clock, yeah, and just touching back to some of those like old school real world objects. So it's kind of cool that it's there.
I just like how the only time someone swears in this movie is like there's a Neo on one of those monitors in the background that goes "fuck you" and like you can hear it and everything. But like,
several times just giving the finger to the camera.
Yeah.
Just more.
It's a cool effect. Like obviously you see other responses and you zoom into the one he's going to give. It's a cool scene, but I still don't understand why. I definitely
remember
there's been 5 iterations of the Matrix.
Watching this when it came out, so I was year 11, so 03, and it just going over your head. Just sort of everyone's kind of like, yeah, sweet, I want to get back to the action sort of thing. It's very much one of those things now that like I watched this with the subs on just for this scene, just to kind of like see if I can gauge. And even by that point, I don't know. I can't define it for you. Right. Just figure it out yourself.
All right, so I'm going to read from Wikipedia.
I was about to say, do you want me to try and...
Okay, do you want to try and explain?
All right. So, he basically says that they create, when the machines were trying to work out how to create their crops, humans. They try to come up with the Matrix. And the first one they did was this ultra perfect world where humans would be super happy. And the machines thought that will work surely, because if we make everyone happy, we'll just have all these humans asleep. But then the humans kept waking up. So then he like goes on this whole like speech about how, you know, humans love pain and all, you know, mumbo jumbo, ergo, and all this mumbo jumbo. So then he goes on about making sure they have a real world where it's like all built on pain. That's why you get all these flickers of like Adolf Hitler and whoever the fuck else in the background, all this sort of shit. And then I'm trying missing parts. And he's like, goes on about Oracle. I can't remember where she comes into it. Something, she's necessary for some reason. But then they're like, oh, it's more or less explains that they've had several times this has happened. I think they say it's the 6th time, basically. But it's written into the code, basically, that 1% of the crops will sort of break free and create Zion. And that's like how they've reached this perfect balance. And it's happened again. They've wiped it out over and over and over. Neo's like basically a thing that they're aware of, like a glitch in the Matrix that is necessary or whatever. There's been several Neos before and there'll be several Neos afterwards and blah, 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 blah. Right. How close am I?
Seems legit.
Yeah, I'd say pretty close. The Wikipedia actually just is an overview of the thing. So, yeah. So,
the Wikipedia says,
enters a source, meets a bearded man in the suit, the architect, the creator of the Matrix. The architect reveals there have been multiple versions of the Matrix, with it 6 versions of the One. The One is a computer anomaly chosen by the Matrix to be used as a tool of control. We'll note several times we've heard throughout the film prior to this mentions of his predecessors, which, you know, were obvious pretty big hints, you know, that he wasn't the first one.
The French dude's like, your predecessors weren't this rude or whatever.
The prophecy is that the One must reach the source in order to destroy the Matrix for humanity. However, the One's actual purpose is to return to the source and choose 16 females and 7 males. Weird, you know.
The thing is,
ratio to rebuild Zion after this battle, which in turn repopulates the city, creating a collection point for the humans who reject the Matrix, making these humans easier to control and less of a danger to stability of the captive population of pod-bound people.
I think Neo must be pretty narrow-sighted, because when they ran through that restaurant kitchen with Persephone, that's where the source was.
Wow, fucking hell!
Audible head shake.
Yeah, no, you can hear my head shake. It was the fucking helper.
But yeah, I feel like I somewhat have a between that and then the Dylan definition. I feel like I somewhat have a grip on it.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's like for 99% of the audience, I'm sure it went over their heads. But for that 1%, they got it.
It just says like the whole movie, like, I mean, the first Matrix as well, but it sort of like delves off the part. But like, obviously, the Matrix and specifically this movie delves a lot into like human free will and you know, because again, red pill, blue pill, like the whole franchise is built around free pill and what decisions you actually have and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why you end up with people having these discussions now. It's like, are we actually in the Matrix? Do you have free will? I know. I mean, like, if you ever watch Johnny Darko, like I remember the first time I watched Johnny Darko, I was like, fuck, do I actually have control over my life? Like sometimes you watch movies that do these conversations right and you are kind of like, wait, am I a robot? Like, did I admit that? Have I always said this? Was I always here? Like, yeah.
I mean, the logic is not terrible when you think about it, especially in the context of right now with like vaccine mandates. So, like, I guess in this weird way, the people who reject the Matrix are and I'm sure they'd love to hear this, are the people who reject vaccines. It's
like Kid Rock.
And they're like, government's like, oh, we control these. Now we know who these people are that are going against, you know, everything. We can control them better.
The ones who are coming out are the ones who are taking the vaccines. But to make sure that they don't spread the word of how good the vaccine is to the rest of the people in the Matrix, they implement the story of the One, which is Neo. So then everyone gets distracted on him being the path they need to go to make sure everyone gets their vaccine, because they're then distracted on that instead of then going back in and out of the Matrix to constantly break out more people. They're then focused on the one mission, which is Neo, which is keeps the That's
then
why I know.
inflies Joe Rogan with horse paste.
Do you see
I
what's
feel like
happening
I
in
need to
Australia?
reiterate at this point that vaccines work and you should definitely take them.
Yeah.
So then, of course, he
Saving
gets the
Trinity.
choice. Is he going to go rebuild Zion, continue the cycle? Or is he going to fuck everybody over and go save Trinity?
Man,
Okay.
it
And he
still
goes and saves
hurts.
Trinity.
It seems pretty... The architect seemed pretty nonchalant about his choice to fuck everything up.
But when you're
like,
coming off,
oh.
you're coming off the first movie where the Oracle says you're not the one, and then he is the one, but she says that, then it doesn't matter. But then you get this other scene where literally the architect's like, if you go to that door, this is what you do. But we already know the choice you're going to make. So then again, it's already into this head game thing of like, did Neo actually make the decision he was always going to make? Did he not make the decision he was always going to make? Like as an
There's
audience,
a lot of interesting questions of free
Yeah.
will and choice and
yeah.
that kind of stuff. And then we get the obviously Trinity dies and then gets revived by Neo.
Man,
Hooray!
Even though it's in code form, just the idea of an entire hand being like dipped into your body just hurts to watch. And I know it comes out and it's all like magical and it's like there's no marks or anything, but between that and her going, "Rah!" I was just like, man. And then she dies, and then he's like, no, I'm just going to grab your heart and just start pumping it. And
No,
I'm like, they don't
fuck
teach
that.
this in first aid course.
No, I've seen medical dramas. That's what happens. So everything's that ends well, except they come back to the Nebuchadnezzar, the ship.
Nebuchadnezzar.
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 Doesn't matter. It gets destroyed by a bomb.
Everything's a bomb. Everything's a bomb. That's what I wrote.
So they get, they have to leave the Nebuchadnezzar. They get chased down by some sentinels, and Neo's like, "Oh, something feels different." And then he uses his
He uses the Force.
the one powers
He uses the Force.
outside of the Matrix.
Everything outside the Matrix, just there's so many elements that cross over into Star Wars vibes, and I'm like, come on. Like, he's just using the Force.
He used the Force.
But he used the Force so much that then he collapses when the Sentinel dies. So it's just, yeah.
I mean, when I was watching the ending of how much of a downer note it is, like, everything we believe was a lie, the prophecy is not real. It's like, yeah, that feels kind of Empire Strikes Back. Yeah.
The other funny thing about this,
But
the whole, like,
then you end on this, like, hopeful note.
the whole theme with, like, he's like, yeah, this is a bomb, and it's all this usage of bombs and everything being bombs. And I remember at the time being like, oh, it'd be really sweet if they finished this film with Rage Against the Machine Come Like a Bomb. And then the credits hit. I was like, oh my God. I forgot that was a thing. Yeah.
I can't remember if they have a Rage song in the third one as well. Do they do all three?
I think that
don't
they
know.
don't, and that's probably why I find it disappointing. The film's
That's why
probably
it's
fine,
very-
but it's
it
probably
was
just that one
critically
note. It's like you needed the trilogy. I mean, that's where we, obviously ends the film on a real, obviously more to come.
It's like, what the fuck moment.
But shout out to Mickey from Always Greener. Do you remember Always Greener? The
show yeah.
and he was he's the kid, and I always forget about that. He's
Oh,
super
yeah,
enthusiastic.
the-
He's like, oh, hey Neo. He's like, I can't really want to join in, Neo. And he's actually cast in Resurrections, same actor. So I was pretty stoked with that.
Well, they were shot back to back, so yeah. So Clayton.
No,
Watson.
in Resurrections.
Oh,
Yeah,
in
the
Resurrections.
new one. Yeah.
Sorry,
On
they're
IMDb.
all named the same. So.
Yeah, they're all named the same. I still think the funniest moment in the entire film, though, is Link when he busts in to see his wife. He's like, "Where's my pussy?" And then he stops. That was so good. And I was just like, again, sexual film. Yeah, there's a lot of, just some other notes I had, tribal techno cave humping, a lot of see-through shirts.
I think it's a weird choice to Morpheus to go when they're trying to hide from these sentinels that are trying to kill them, to like, let's make enough noise that they can hear us.
Yep.
Maybe
One
not
of
the
the
smartest choice.
funniest things from a sub's perspective is the Trinity Neo sex scene, and literally at the very end of the sex scene, it says music climaxes.
Wait. The question we all want to know after last episode: did you watch this this movie with your son again?
No, because I was actually trying to.
Ooh.
I will.
Dodged a bullet,
I'll take
maybe.
him straight to the to the brawl and the highway scene. I know he'll love those, but yeah, this is definitely
Not
this is
the
above
start.
his pay grade. This is too sexual. So I'm gonna have to. Yeah, I
think he can come back for next week. I think next week's free of sex. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
they don't have time when the world's ending. So
Yeah. I mean, most people would argue that's the best time.
Also, the one thing when we first get introduced to Bane and he's got the knife, and I'm like, what's with this whole like betrayers being white guy with goatee? You know, like Cypher, Bane, like that's just like that's how they have to be.
Yeah,
like,
so if you didn't notice, Bane's the guy who got abducted, like taken over by Agent Smith, and then he exits the Matrix through the phone.
yes, yeah. But
And he's the guy laying
he's the
in
guy
the
who
other.
cuts his hand at the start and goes to try and attack.
Yep,
yeah.
and he's the one survivor from the other ship at the
Yes,
end of the movie.
yeah.
dun, dun,
I also thought
dun.
that fight with Serif was wicked before he gets to Oracle. It kind of like replicates
Yes.
that like training routine sort of Morpheus like environment. That was really cool. But I think the best part about that is it just shows how much he's advanced as just like, again, the confidence in fighting and stuff.
Yep. So fun fact, Jet Li was originally cast as him.
But Jet Li's the one.
Was offered.
Jet Li's the one.
Yeah, see, that's why he was offered the role, because there can't be
two
they just make sure
ones.
there was only one. But yeah, he turned it down because he didn't want his martial arts moves digitally recorded. So I assume they would have done like full motion graphics or whatever of his moves, and he didn't want that done. So
I mean, fair. That is his shtick. So
yep.
Yeah. No, I think all in all, enjoy. Yeah, it's. I think there's just that bit of adjustment, just trying to get used to the new vibe of again being thrust into Zion and everything. It's kind of like I just love that sort of sparse, cold kind of like we're amongst this in this ship surrounded by Sentinels vibe with the first one. That when you get to this one, it's like there's so many humans, but then they also get getting a bit savage and there's power struggles and there's like Nobi was my ex-girlfriend and stuff. So yeah, it's better in the way.
I've got to like possibly jumping ahead because we could discuss this next week, but I began thinking about it during this one. So, which is that most people, this is like one of those things where people are like, I love the Matrix. I'm such a big Matrix fan. And then you're like, well, tell me what you think about all three. And then the majority of people I feel go, Matrix 1, awesome. And then they kind of go to shit afterwards. But then people will be like, I love the Matrix, which is why I think it's funny that
There's so much love for Resurrections.
Yes, everyone's like, Resurrections, fuck yeah, can't wait. But I mean, call me insane, but surely Resurrections is going to be more. Well, I'd bet on it. The Matrix Resurrections is going to be more Reloaded and Revelations than the Matrix 1. It's going to be continuation of the more this, like thematically.
I don't know.
I reckon it is.
I think you're going to get. Well, obviously they start from being inside the Matrix and not having a memory of being outside the Matrix, so that would imply that it's very much like the original Matrix.
I think,
other than
Speed
Racer.
Great
Speed
movie.
Racer. Hell
So
yeah.
Lana's the one so it's only Lana that's doing Resurrection, right? But she has done and she was the head person in charge of Sense8, a show that's just all like progressive themes and whatever else. And then before that you had bloody Jupiter Ascending, which apparently was shit and I didn't watch. But again, that's another movie that was just something that was so like out there and it just couldn't fulfill it. Cloud Atlas, which is a movie that is just completely like a million and one themes and you know what I mean? Like, I just don't feel like, I think anyone coming into Resurrections, and is going to be like, yeah, can't wait for more of the Matrix 1. I'm like, no, it's going to be more of 2 or 3. You need to like.
I think it's more the idea of, from what you see, it being less that CGI fest and more just like natural, like real world colors and stuff like that. Maybe that's where they're leaning into, but I love going into Resurrections just ready for anything, whether it's more down that one path or more down the other. But either way, I think there's going to be a lot in it. It's not going to be as singularly focused as one. There's no way it can be. They've done all this building into it. So yeah, I think it'll. Yeah, we'll get a division of people being like, yeah, it was so great, it's awesome. You know, I love the first one, I love the new one, and then again, probably bagging on the middle or like going back and be like, oh yeah, I was always pretending that they were always a fan, versus people being like, oh, John Wick, and that's probably what you're gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm super excited. Like the more different clothes and stuff that I see in Morpheus with the character posters and everything like that, I'm like, this is sick. Like, I'm really keen to see. Like, I mean, he's expanded that wardrobe. So,
well, the other thing I've been thinking rewatching these two movies is that even though, because we don't really see it in the trailers, even though Keanu still has his John Wick haircut and everything, the fight scenes in The Matrix are way different to the fight scenes in John Wick films.
John Wick, yeah.
So he may look like John Wick.
They're kind of way different, yeah.
Yeah. They're just not like, they're not going to be anything the same. There's no way you're going to be watching a fight scene in The Matrix and be like, oh, this feels like a John Wick film. It's not. It's not.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of other things. Obviously, we see Gina Torres as Link's sister. We see Harry Lennox as big old what is it? Commander Locke. You know? And did you notice the Australian director who was in the film?
Who's that? Sorry,
I know Essie Davis is in it.
Yeah, Essie Davis. I was literally just IMDbing then, forgetting her name, trying to think of like what she's in, and I started to write the true story of Ned Kelly because she's in that just to get her name.
Yes,
but I was going to say that because I didn't look it up, and I'm thinking when she popped up and obviously got the the short red hair and stuff, I was like, is that? I was like, yeah, that's got to be her because there's so many Australian actors in this. Even just like that dude from. I forget that guy's name. You know the dude when they're outside the Matrix. He's got the grey hair and he speaks like this and Zion and stuff like that. And he's that Australian dude that's just in heaps of stuff. I forget his name, but yeah, he's in it.
No, the one I'm thinking of is director of Upgrade and The Invisible Man, Lee Winnell.
Lee Winnell.
He plays one of the guys on the other ship that gets destroyed by the Sentinels.
Oh, rip.
Yeah, he's
All right. Anything else you wanted to discuss from The Matrix Reloaded?
Not Reloaded, but just looking forward.
Was the
you go.
Was the highest grossing R-rated film of all time until
this is rated R?
The Deadpool, yeah.
In America?
In America, yeah.
The thing is though, there's that impaling scene that's pretty.
It's only M.
That's pretty bloody. When that dude trips.
We just talked about how sexual this movie is.
Yeah.
So many times.
And then someone else gets impaled.
I mean, I would say it's like, yes, it does have a sex scene, but it's not it's a very sensual sex scene. It's not a porn sex scene.
It's filled with love.
I really don't feel like it's deserving of like an R rating.
There were several see-through shirts. It's R-rated.
I think this is very tame. Like as far as like nudity and sex scenes go,
just
like I'm not saying kids should watch it, but I'm just saying like if you watch, you watch like compare this to like Game of Thrones, for example.
Oh, Game of Thrones is all about that. I mean, put it this way: there's no, what was I gonna say? Not bestiality. Incest. I don't know why I jumped straight to bestiality. Anyway, although you could say that they're all acting like animals, if you know what I mean. Anyway, looking forward to the third one because I've only seen it once, and that was when it came out. So all I remember is a lot of those like mech bots, more of the kid, a lot of Code View style scenes. It ending with like the Oracle on a park bench, and that's pretty much it. So I'm going in relatively.
Yeah, my memory of this movie is very, very hazy. So
I think everyone's memory of that movie is hazy because I remember when the trailer dropped for 4 and people were like, how the fuck are they doing this? The Matrix ended. I'm like, the last movie literally ends after they explain there's been several Neos previously, and then even though Neo thinks he's like changed everything, it literally ends with the Oracle being like, I think we'll see him again. Like it was always left open. Like
I would love there to be a new character whose name is Wat, W-O-T, and he's the 2.
He's the 2?
So instead of Neo, N-E-O as the 1, it's he like this person rocks up. He's like, "Hey, what? No, okay."
that would not pass.
Let us know what you thought of
See, there's a reason I'm not
The
directing
Matrix Reloaded.
okay?
Yeah, let us know what you thought of The Matrix Reloaded by going to explosion.com/Twitter or jump into a Discord at explosionnetwork.com/Discord. Simon, where can people find you on the internet?
On Twitter at PrecisePath if you actually do appreciate terrible jokes.
If you want to help us out here at What Do You Want to Watch, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on Podchaser, or tell people about the show. And if you like this episode, thoughts with it, I'll head on over to our Ko-fi page at explosion.com/support. Thank you very much for listening. Until next time, keep watching stuff, I guess.
Welcome to the real world.